Hello and welcome everyone. This is Mike Dahl from Inflow Communications. We're going to get started on our admin training today about upgrading to ShoreTel Connect. Excited to have you all here, and I'm going to get started and kick things off here. So quick plug for next month's webinar. It's coming up in a couple weeks, Contact Center Metrics. That's focused on ShoreTel Contact Center. We'll be digging into 5 key metrics for contact center managers. And the training we're doing today is part of our ongoing commitment to providing as much value and information and sort of real-world experiences on ShoreTel and all things ShoreTel and Contact Center. So excited to have you joining us today. Welcome to all of our customers and other guests attending. So for presenting, I've got myself, I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing Inflow. I've been working with unified communication solutions and contact centers for over 10 years. And I've got with me also presenting Chris Mitchell, one of the smartest gentlemen I know, and has a ton of experience with ShoreTel, 10+ years with ShoreTel design, implementation, supporting lots of big projects and lots of experiences from Chris that he's excited to share with you today. Just to give you a little bit of context on who we are as a company, if you're new to us, our agenda first is we'll introduce you to ourselves. We'll dig into some of the basics of Connect to just really level set everybody on some of what is Connect. There's a lot of confusion that we've seen talking with our customers around what it is and what it's not. So we want to kind of dispel some of the myths and give you some crystal clear clarity on what Connect is about, what you get out of it, what you do or don't have to do. Then we'll dig into the upgrade side of it specifically, things to know, and just all the tips and gotchas and stuff that you want to be aware of. That's going to be the core of what we're presenting on. We'll have time for question and answers at the end, and then also I'll leave you with some additional resources as we wrap up. So digging into who Inflow is to give you, if you're new to us, just some context for our experience. All we do as a company is we're really specialists. We focus on ShoreTel and we focus on contact center solutions. When it comes to ShoreTel, we're a platinum partner, which is their highest designation. It means that we do a lot of business with them, but also, and more importantly, we have high customer satisfaction that they track and maintain for their partners, and also that we have a lot of certified engineers and installers, and so we have I think over 18 now folks on our team dedicated to working with our ShoreTel customers. We support over 600 customers, so 600 unique ShoreTel systems across the nation and across the globe. And we've got offices spread throughout the U.S. as well. We're 100% virtual as a company, but we've got folks located in many, many different states, as you can see there. A couple of our great customers, we've got many, like I said, that we work with. Here's a couple logos of some of the ones we work with that might be recognizable pretty broadly. And we support over 100,000 ShoreTel endpoints, so a wide breadth of customers, as well as a large volume really of handsets and infrastructure with ShoreTel that we work with on a day-to-day basis. So I want to take all of that knowledge and experience that we've got working with all these customers and share with you specifically around ShoreTel Connect. We're excited to do that. So to dig right into some of the basics on ShoreTel Connect. So first off, let's get into the what is it. So ShoreTel Connect is really the newest version of ShoreTel's on-premise and cloud solutions. So Connect does not just mean it's version 15. It does mean that, but that's not only what it means. It also means it's ShoreTel calls their official terms are ShoreTel Connect on-site and ShoreTel Connect cloud, distinguishing between the architectural type that a particular customer has or is purchasing. So for customers that have an on-site ShoreTel system today, Connect for you would mean version 15. If you're on version 13 or version 14, Connect would be effectively version 15. And so why did ShoreTel call this Connect instead of just calling it version 15? Well, this is a big change from previous versions, so 12 to 13, 13 to 14. Definitely some changes, enhancements that ShoreTel did, but Connect is really a big change. They took the version 14 base code, but really enhanced and reworked a lot of this. So you'll see a lot of screenshots and a lot of information. You've probably seen a lot of this before, but you'll see big differences on the client side of things, on the admin side of things. So part of it's ShoreTel's rebranding of this to kind of create buzz and excitement around it. The other side is this is really a unification of the look and feel of ShoreTel's cloud and their premises products. Whereas historically you had ShoreTel Sky, which is it still exists as a cloud product. Creating Connect gave a unified look and feel to, so if you had a cloud customer or a premises ShoreTel customer, once they're on Connect, the look and feel to a typical end user would be identical. So they're really the unification of those platforms, branding it Connect. I wanted to share a timeline that we put together with you just to give you some context on where things have been with Connect, where things are at right now. So ShoreTel started development in 2013 on this new version of Connect. And on the left side, you can see Inflow beta testing of Connect started in early 2015. So we're on ShoreTel's technical advisory committee, part of their Connect beta testing group, and so we've been using this for over 2 years. The platform itself, ShoreTel provided the controlled release of Connect in the middle of 2015, so almost just approaching 2 years now. And that controlled release was for new systems. So if somebody wanted to put in a new ShoreTel system, they had the ability from the middle of 2015 on to put it in on Connect. It's very early, it's very raw. So Inflow gave it a couple months before we started implementing new systems on that version, and that was at the beginning of 2016. And Inflow migrated our production system to Connect in about, I think that's April or so, March or April of 2016. So we've been on Connect on our platform in production for our business for just over a year. ShoreTel just in the last couple of months went general availability for Connect upgrades. So up until the end of 2016, no existing ShoreTel on-site customers had the ability, there wasn't general availability, I should say, for upgrading from version 13 or 14 to Connect. So that just happened a couple months ago. And we've been approaching this very cautiously as a company. We've been waiting really for this .1 release, which was just released a few weeks ago from ShoreTel, to really enhance that upgrade and migration process. So that was released. We applied it to our system several weeks ago, and that's been running great. And what we've been doing is trying to be really thoughtful. This is a big change, and we want this to go really well for customers. So we've created an early adopter program with a handful of our customers that we'll be upgrading them to Connect from 13 or 14 to Connect in the next few weeks, really white gloving that process so we really can understand it, make it a great success for these customers, and just learn any more of the gotchas as we dig into very specific environments and different use cases of how customers are using their system. So we're anticipating into 2017 that we'll be able to endorse Connect for the majority of customers out there. So that's the timeline. That's where we're at. So we're kind of right in this window right here at the beginning of the early adopter program. So moving into some of, okay, what's new with Connect? And this is, we could probably spend an entire hour just on this particular piece of it, but we won't do that today. We'll just give you some of the highlights. Chris will dig a little bit more into some of these as well. So one of the biggest changes you can see off to the right here, new communicator client. So ShoreTel, the communicator client in its present state on version 13 and 14 hadn't gone through many changes the last couple of years. So new communicator client, you can see a lot more white space. It's a lot more modern looking, lots of different changes. Chris will dig into some of those. One of the big things of the client is that there's Windows and Mac client parity. So that's something that, as there's been I'd say a growth from our perspective in Mac users on ShoreTel the last several years, this will give complete parity between the client on PCs and Macs, which is great. Another big change historically on 13 and 14 ShoreTel, if you have ECC, ShoreTel's Enterprise Contact Center, that's been a part of the communicator client. ShoreTel actually separates that from the client, the desktop client going forward on Connect. And so ECC users really have a browser application. You can see a screenshot of it below from one of our team members. So that gets separated out of the regular telephony and collaboration piece that you can see off to the right. Another change is on the admin side, and this one usually makes all the administrators really happy, is the Connect Director, which is the new name for the ShoreWare Director, has browser compatibility beyond Internet Explorer, finally and thankfully. So that's a nice little change. And then sort of a more broad description of what's new with Connect is ShoreTel spent a lot of time on collaboration enhancements. So ShoreTel, very rich history with telephony and call control in those pieces, and had been lacking, in our opinion, or at least in my opinion, the last few years on some of the collaboration enhancements. And so Connect picks up a lot of that slack around instant messaging and screen sharing, a native integration with Skype for Business, as well as enhancing some of the video capabilities. And last but not least on this piece is the enhanced soft phone. And this is kind of speak to a broader change with ShoreTel as well, as far as Connect facilitates a lot more capabilities for sure in the client. Soft phones is one of those big enhancements, and also some of the remote user capabilities. So soft phone was built on pretty old codecs and is a long time. It hadn't been updated in a long time. So Connect really improves that, enhances it. We've been using internally soft phone. Many of our users use it exclusively, so really good feedback on it, and it's been a great enhancement. A couple other updates that ShoreTel has marketed this one heavily, which is the ShoreTel hybrid capabilities of Connect. The hybrid deployment model, it's tough to see this exact picture, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but just to give you kind of a quick visual representation, what ShoreTel means by hybrid is if you have on your left ShoreTel on-premise system like you have today, and that's upgraded to Connect, you can connect your system with another ShoreTel Connect cloud system. So two disparate systems, left and right here, premise and cloud, and the ability to connect those is what ShoreTel calls our hybrid deployment. What that connection means is the directories can be synced between the two systems. So you could have users who could have look in their directory and see a user that potentially is not even on their premise system, but they're looking at it and seeing that user. They wouldn't know any different as a user. It just kind of unifies the directory and syncs those. And then along with that, the ability, basically it's a SIP tie between the cloud and the premise system, so that calls can be 4-digit dials, or 4-digit dialing can happen between the two systems. So users can have the feeling of being able to dial between the two platforms. So that's ShoreTel hybrid, and what that means, that's available once you have your premise system on Connect, and then of course you'd have to add a cloud instance for some remote site or group of users that would be on that platform. Another change, and Chris will dig more into the specifics, but new switches that are available and out there, and the gist of it is that they're more horsepower to them, so you don't have the IP resource trade-off where if you have analog connected, it reduces the amount of IP phones and resources you have available. So ShoreTel just really upped the horsepower on some of those newer physical appliances. The Edge Gateway, Chris will spend more time on as well, but just the high level of it is this is really a displacement for a VPN concentrator. So having physical phones outside your environment, outside of your network, the ability for them to tunnel directly back, hit this Edge Gateway and be a part of the ShoreTel system, as well as doing that from the physical phone side as well as from the client side. So your Connect client can do that as well. So Edge Gateway is an architectural change in Connect. It's a nice enhancement. Really allows for a lot more improvements around remote employees connecting back to the ShoreTel system. And lastly, Linux-based DVSs are now available on Connect. So if you don't want to have to manage another Windows server for your DVS servers, this gives you an option to run it, a Linux-based DVS, if you have VMware and you want to run it in there. So a couple last things that don't fit nicely into any sort of one bucket, but I think are really good things for all of, if you're a current ShoreTel customer and you're trying to think, what else do I need to know about Connect? Here's a slide I think that captures a lot of those other details. So with ShoreTel's general availability of upgrading to Connect, if you're on that general availability for that upgrade path and that supported path is if you're on version 13 or 14 today. Those are the supported upgrade paths. And that's consistent with ShoreTel's message really of officially supporting 2 versions back from the latest version. So they built and did all the testing around that upgrade path for those 2 major versions. Also, the really nice thing that I talked about new switches a moment ago, I don't need everyone to panic. Most everything, really almost everything, there's very, very few exceptions of phones or switches that aren't supported going forward on Connect. So while there are new switches available if you're expanding your system or wanted to refresh hardware, you have new switches you can do that on once you're on the Connect version. You don't have this upgrading to Connect does not mean you have to go out and replace all your phones and switches in most circumstances. The question's been asked of us many times of how long are people being forced to go to Connect? Is this something you have to do? You're definitely not compelled. Any reason to go to it right now by Inflow or ShoreTel. We're estimating another 2 to 3 years of support for 14.2, which is the latest version before major version before Connect, version 15. So you've got a good while before really you'll be falling out of sort of the supported window of versions if you're on 14.2 today. There's also some good free perks to take advantage of when you do migrate to Connect, and some of these are less widely known and less published. So just wanted to share some of the ones I think that are really great. You have the ability to order a $0, or your partner has the ability to order a $0 SKU to basically get soft phones for all of your users that have a voicemail and extension license for them when you do that Connect upgrade, which is nice. So that's previously on older versions you'd have to pay separately for soft phones. You get that on Connect. Really, you kind of get that as you upgrade to Connect, and then going forward, the soft phone license comes bundled in effectively. Also, the Edge Gateway that I talked about earlier, that's not a cost for that it's just a virtual appliance. It's $0. You just pay for if you want to have a physical 400 series phone connected through that, then you would pay a license for that. If you have VPN Concentrator today, there's a way to use those licenses that you've purchased on VPN Concentrator to migrate over as well. So really any cost that you've invested in the past can carry forward. Definitely, just like you've seen on version 14 with ShoreTel, that ShoreTel has built more capabilities around the VMware than there are at Hyper-V, and I think Chris will touch on that in a little more detail, but just in a general sense, that trend continues with Connect. A real clear example of that is the Edge Gateway only exists as a VMware image that you can deploy. So there's no physical appliance for that today. So if you have Hyper-V only, this is that's sort of a tough area right there. The other thing is new licensing bundles that Connect has. Again, I don't want to get too stuck in the weeds on this, but ShoreTel's really repackaged the way they sell licensing for users, and they've done it in a way that's, I think, really customer friendly, right? You basically get more for the same price or for less. And so you can actually order that licensing today, even if you're not on Connect, and take advantage of some of the extra features and functions you get, or extra licenses rather that you get. So that's something you can have and take advantage of even if you're not on Connect. And then the last point I wanted to make real quick is just to be thinking of as far as what other costs you should think about and plan for when you're upgrading to Connect. Really the big thing is, and again, it's going to vary. If you're not a customer of Inflows, then this is potentially a different conversation with whoever you're working with today. But from an Inflow customer perspective, we've got the ability to upgrade customers to Connect. Once we kind of give our full endorsement to it, that you can do that as a customer for no cost. What we've created though are packages that really address this first bullet point down here of end user training. That for us is the big change on this upgrade. How are you going to plan for end user training? Because as opposed to the 12 to 13, 13 to 14, et cetera, type of upgrades of the past, those were all really IT projects happening during the maintenance window. Well, that same thing's going to have to happen for Connect, but when the users come in the next day, if you have a lot of ShoreTel Communicator users in your environment, you definitely don't want to blindly do this project and then they come in and have the new client installed, and they're going to be upset. So just factoring in that end user training, we've created packages to really address that to help customers out with that piece of it. So more details of that we can share later, but that's really one cost you should think about, and even if it's just an internal cost you bear of the time to take to do train the trainer, or how are you going to approach that plan. And then the other thing is Edge Gateway implementation. If you want help setting that up, if that's something that's going to be really useful for your environment, thinking about if you need to acquire any certs for getting that functional. And that's really pretty much it. A lot of the rest of the process Chris will walk through in good detail here. A lot of that's going to be pretty similar as far as our recommendations for best practices for doing that. You're not really adding too much net new to the system. A lot of it's just likely migrating from older servers to newer servers and things like that. So with that, Chris, I'm going to pause here and turn it over to you to dig into your pieces of this and get into a little more details.
All right, thank you. And I've kind of been answering some of the questions as we go, and I'm going to answer a few more of them, as I talk about some of the requirements and the gotchas and stuff around upgrading, and then we'll if Mike, if you want to look at any of them, see if there's any questions you want to answer, but then we'll get to the rest of the questions as we get to the question and answer. Any ones that aren't answered still, we'll attack those at the end. So the biggest things we always get questions is, what are the requirements in order for me to upgrade to Connect? So obviously, Mike, you saw Mike had version 13 or 14 of your PBX version, and they're supporting every build within 13 and 14. So it doesn't matter if you're on 13, 13.1, 13, 14, 14.1, 14.2, any of those are going to be supported for the upgrade. The same thing goes for ECZ 8 and 9. Any of the general availability builds inside of ECZ 8 and 9 are going to be compatible to be upgraded to Connect Contact Center. If you do have a mobility router, either physical or virtual, it does need to be on mobility version 8 or 8.1 in order to qualify for an upgrade to the mobility 9, which is the current Connect version. I did see one question in the question is there is a new mobility client coming out. The scheduled release date is July. We have already seen the screenshots and everything of it, and they are completely updating the mobility client to look more current to what the new Connect client and everything looks like. So there is a new mobility version releasing in July. Available for any of the mobility users. They didn't necessarily add a lot of functionality or features. They added some new device support, and then a lot of it's just functionality and stability, fixes inside the new mobility version that's coming out. One big thing is if you're not already on a 64-bit operating system for your headquarters or DVSs, that's one thing you could start working on now is ahead of your Connect upgrade is you need to be on 2008 R2 or 2012 R2. Obviously, we prefer 2012 R2 support for those servers. The one thing is you can be in a mixed environment, so you don't necessarily have to upgrade all your HQs or DVSs at the same time. You could upgrade your headquarters servers and then start upgrading your DVSs, over the next month or two. You don't necessarily have to do all of your operating system upgrades on your servers at the exact same time. So from a hard drive space, typically we don't have this problem, but every once in a while, if a customer's on an older server or anything like that, you do need 30 gigs of free space in order to do the Connect upgrade. If it doesn't see that there's 30 gigs of free space, the upgrade will cancel itself out. So just be alert if you have a virtual server, plan on expanding that hard drive or something ahead of time. Also for requirements, VMware ESXi 5.5 or 6, if you're looking to utilize any of the virtual switches or appliances or stuff that we'll be talking about, what's new, you can virtualize your servers in Hyper-V. That is supported, so your headquarters server, your DVSs, or your ECC server can be virtualized inside of Hyper-V. Those are all supported. Just none of the Linux-based appliances are supported inside of Hyper-V yet. No longer supported, and nice thing is this list is very small if you notice. No longer supported is if you have any IP210s, they weren't officially supported in 14.2, but they did work. So if you have any IP210s, they are not on the official list. The one big question we've always had is the IP530 has been discontinued years ago from ShoreTel, but they did put a firmware out for the IP530 inside of Connect, so you can continue to use your IP530 phones, which were originally slated to not be supported in Connect. But when ShoreTel realized how many phones they still had in production that were 530s, they went ahead and extended 530 support into the Connect platform. Obviously, the 32-bit OS, server OS is no longer supported. And then Outlook 2007 is no longer supported. So if you're using an Office product, it needs to be 2010 or newer. They are supporting 2016 Office already for your Office 365 users. But anybody on Outlook 2007, you will lose all of your Outlook integration capabilities if you're using Outlook 2007 when you upgrade to Connect. We're already having some Outlook 2007 problems on 14.2, so it's not a big shock to us. And the big thing when you upgrade to Connect is we have to upgrade everything at the same time. So if we have to upgrade your mobility, we have to upgrade your contact center and your PBX platform all at the same time. I can't just upgrade your PBX and leave your ECC on 8 or 9. Everything has to go to the Connect platform. And when I do that, I lose all backwards compatibility. So the 14.2 communicator clients will no longer work with Connect. The same thing goes forward. If you were to install a Connect client, desktop client right now, it is not backwards compatible with 14.2. They didn't spend the time and resources to make the desktop clients, the ECC client, or the mobility clients backwards compatible or forwards compatible from an investment time in their development. They made that decision years ago and decided that it was going to be a full platform upgrade. So you will need to plan on upgrading all of your DVSs, your HQ servers, your switches, your phones with new firmwares, and all your contact center, plus all of your agent workstations. So a lot of customers, are going to be probably looking at maybe a Friday night upgrade with a weekend that they can push their desktop clients out or something over a weekend potentially, or doing it on a day when the next day is, a holiday or something like that, to give IT teams of bigger systems more time to upgrade their DVSs or their desktop clients in order to accommodate the full system platform upgrade. So with Connect, being that it's it's still a platform that's, they've been developing on it, for a long time. As more and more customers are getting on it, there's still features from the communicator client or from 14.2 that haven't been rolled into the Connect client yet. So the biggest ones not currently supported is extension links longer than 5 digits. So I know we have a handful of customers that have more than 5-digit extensions. So if you're running any site prefixes right now, you're sitting on a configuration of 14.2 that is not supported in Connect yet. And the main reason is it's not, from an upgrade standpoint. They're having some database issues on the site prefixes that they're working through. So if you have 3-digit, 4 digits, or 5-digit extension, you're perfectly fine. But if you're running any site prefixes, you are not eligible to upgrade to Connect yet. They haven't committed to a date for fixing that yet, but they are working on it. So that's a big thing to be aware of. You'll fail the pre-check installation, the pre-check install, and it'll air out the installation as part of that check when it's starting the installation process. The second big one, which is big, is the docking of the Connect client. Current in your communicator right now, you can dock it left, right, top, or bottom. Right now, there's no docking capability. There is keep in front capabilities, but there is no docking capabilities in the desktop Connect client. They are bringing left and right docking back to the client, but there will no longer be a top or bottom docking option. They are also working on that one, but they haven't committed to a date to have the client docking in production. How their new releases are working is every 90 days, they roll features in to the Connect client. So similar to a lot of cloud solutions. So every quarter there's a feature build that gets rolled in. So we don't necessarily have to wait till a major yearly release like we do with like 14 and 13, where they were releasing one major update a year. They're rolling features in every quarter. If you're utilizing client toolbars right now, where you have different buttons where you can click different buttons inside your communicator client to maybe either call a particular extension or launch an application or monitor a user, those client toolbars are not integrated into the Connect client, but they will be. They have committed to a date, and they will be rolled in Q4 of this year, of Q4 of 16. And I believe that release is already in testing. It was a little bit behind schedule on that one, but I haven't seen it in production in any of our new installation installs. So we should be. They pulled a build and put it back out, and it may actually be in the new build they just released. So there was the same thing with the Citrix. It was scheduled for Q3 of 16, and they're just releasing some of the full terminal services and Citrix capabilities in. But those are ones, if you're on Citrix or terminal services, we want to definitely be careful and probably take a less aggressive approach for those users, because they are still having some issues, even though the initial releases for those features have passed. They are still having some issues, and they're not fully supported on all versions of terminal services or Citrix. So we just want to take a little bit more cautious approach if you are running every user on those versions. Double take server redundancy, they just announced that this in the latest build that they have a version of double take that is supported, but they haven't rolled backwards compatibility for double take server. So if you do use the double take live active server redundancy, you may have to upgrade to the latest version of double take in order to get the server redundancy to work in Connect, because they haven't certified it backwards compatible at this time. Mobility video calls, not a lot of companies use this, but if you do have mobility users and they use the one-to-one video of Mobility 8, where you can video call somebody's communicator client, that piece doesn't work right now. Mobility to mobility client, you can video call each other. They just haven't got the mobility to desktop client video piece working. They do anticipate that will be working before the end of the year, as they are making a push for more integration in video capability. The last one is Server 2016 now, but they haven't committed to a date for Server 2016 support, but we do anticipate it in the next 2 quarters. So anticipate by the end of the year that they should be supporting that, because I've already seen the engineering team working on those. So if you have any of those features, those are the things you want to kind of be aware of, is and be in communication with either your account manager or the support team to kind of follow the status of those and how other customers are utilizing the toolbars and is working with different terminal server versions. That's a big thing, I would say. So what's new? Obviously, we talked about, Mike talked about the Edge Gateway a little bit. So the Edge Gateway is a VMware-only appliance. Like Mike mentioned, there is not currently a physical release scheduled for this appliance, and there's not currently a Hyper-V version of this scheduled to be released. So it is a VMware-only appliance right now, and it's the device that's going to do your reverse proxy and all of your SSL connections. So your desktop client works outside the office, your soft phone works outside the office. It also does the communication or the inbound authentication for your service appliance, your SA100s for your meetings. So you put a wildcard cert on that Edge Gateway, and then it also handles the 400 series VPN phones. So all the 400 series phones can be VPN phones in Connect. There is licensing for that. So if you own VPN licensing currently for the VPN concentrator, they will convert those licenses for free to the Edge Gateway licenses, so you can swap out and move to 400 series VPN phones as you want. But that's probably the biggest device to get set up is, with a wildcard cert, there's multiple IP addresses. I think we need 3 public IPs in order to, and public DNS in order for that device to function and allow all the functions of the new Connect system to work outside your office and inside your office. The new IP 420G, it's similar to your 420 that you have now. They made a gigabit version. They also released a new button box, which I put a picture on there. The button box only works for the IP 485G. It's a USB button box, and the 485G is the only phone that currently has a USB port on it. So one of them can be powered off the phone using PoE. The second one would need to have a separate power brick plugged in to it in order to utilize more than one button box. The Linux DVS, for you customers who want to get rid of the extra Windows licensing and everything like that associated with your DVSs, you can spin up a Linux DVS. It is only supported in VMware right now because it runs the Linux kernel, and up until last year, ShoreTel wasn't making much progress with Microsoft and getting Linux kernels and everything supported. Now that Hyper-V does support Linux kernel, we're hoping for more Hyper-V development in the future. But as of right now, the Linux DVS is an image that gets spun up in VMware, and it's fully controlled by the ShoreTel system. It's managed and updated by the ShoreTel system. So anytime you push a new patch or update to your ShoreTel system, it'll have a corresponding update for that Linux DVS to go along with that. The one big thing I've had from every customer pretty much on that is, can you do standalone Linux like bug fixes and patches separately? And ShoreTel's official answer is no, but obviously it's on your VMware environment, and you could log into the to the Linux appliance and install updates and stuff as you decided. just know that ShoreTel's not officially supporting that. They're only supporting the Linux patches and stuff up to the date they release it. As you know, they're treating it more as an appliance that has no internet access on that Linux DVS. So it'll be updated only when you update your ShoreTel system from a patch or bug fix standpoint. One new thing, they just announced it, I want to say in the last 30 days, is the Google Chrome extension for Connect. So for any customers that are running Google Apps, you can integrate the Google Chrome extension, and it allows you to quick dial your Google contacts, schedule conferences from your Google Apps calendar, but also have some call control built into the Chrome browser. So I can put a call on hold, I can transfer a call, I can hang up a call, I can quick dial everything from my Chrome browser as part of the Google Apps integration. They also, for non-Google Apps users, they did release a Google Chrome extension for quick dial. So I can simply, any phone number inside of a Chrome browser, I can simply click on it and it'll place a call to that phone number on my ShoreTel client. So there's two Chrome extensions. One is just the quick dialer of clicking of phone numbers, and then the second one is the Google Chrome G Suite integration for all of the Google Apps customers out there. And last, as Mike mentioned, there's a new line of switches. There's the ST1Ds and 2Ds. Those are the PRI switches. They've released a dual PRI. The ST2D can handle 2 PRIs instead of 1 PRI. They're still half-width switches, similar to the SG line. The ST50A, 100A, and 100DA, those are replacements for the 50, the 90, and the 220T1. Those are just the new models. They're just more beefy. They added more additional hardware to them. And the nice thing they did, which everybody's been asking for, is when you hook up analog devices to those switches, you don't lose IP resources anymore. So on a 50A, I can hook up 50 IP phones, plus I can hook up 4 analog extensions and 4 analog phone lines to that. I believe that's the correct number to that model. With the 100A, I can hook up 100 IP phones, 8 analog lines, and 6 extensions, analog devices to the 100A, and still maintaining a full 100 IP phones at the same time. So that's the big key with the 50 and the 100As, is that you don't have a trade-off for IP phones when it comes to analog devices. They've also announced the ST200 and 500, which are strictly IP switches. It's a rack mount appliance that can run 200 or 500 phones. They have no analog capabilities. That's the key to know. On a 200 or 500, they don't have an amp port on them. You cannot hook up any analog devices to those switches. And then the ST24A and 48A are just the replacements for the SG24, but they made a 48 port, and they have long loops. So for people like ski resorts or warehouse spaces, those analog connections can run up to 12,000 feet. So a couple tips when you're upgrading, and then we're going to get into some screenshots after this to kind of show you, a couple of the differences, and then we'll move on to question and answer. So before you upgrade to Connect, you have to disable Active Directory and re-enable it after you're done with the upgrade. Any users who use the Contacts tab in 14.2, which should be every user, if you have a group called Favorites, you need to rename that group, because there's a default Favorites group in Connect, and any user who has that Favorites group, those users will not be moved over to the Connect client. If you rename them something else, it will pull those groups over automatically. So you will want to rename if you have a group called Favorites in your Contacts tab. The other big one is, if you have ECC, you have agent IDs that your agents log in with. Those agent IDs, if they're set to the extension number, which I would say almost every ShoreTel customer I've ever seen is set to extension numbers, those agent IDs have to be changed to match the client ID in the PBX side, because ShoreTel's merging more of the functionality between the two. So the user IDs have to be updated in ECC before you upgrade to Connect. One thing they have changed is ShoreTel is getting stricter on the password policies inside. You can lower it, but by default, the complexity is a lot more than change me used to be in the system. So 8 characters, 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase, 1 number, and 1 special character is the new default password settings. So unless you lower that, that's going to be the new password requirements from your users when you do upgrade and they launch Connect for the first time. They're going to get a password, a new password requirement where they're going to pick a new password. So that's the complexity requirement out of the box from Connect. And as Mike mentioned, soft phone and video license are included for all users in Connect. So the one thing on that is ShoreTel is going to issue you license keys for that, but you will have to go turn those on a per user basis that you want to turn that feature on. We will have to turn those licenses on for the users that you want to allow them. So it won't turn them on by default. We will have to enable those licenses for your end users. So the communicator, like Mike mentioned, becomes the Connect client. It changes from what you see on the left to what you see on the right. If you click the green arrow, the call handling modes are now going to be called availability states. So the modes button on your ShoreTel phones gets named as state instead of mode. So that's one big change. If you do notice, also they added a new vacation mode. So they left most of the modes in there, but you see extended absence became vacation. And then they added a do not disturb mode. So you actually increased one more mode from 5 to 6, going from 14.2 to Connect. You still have every single mode has a different call handling or voicemail greeting and settings and everything that you can still do. So not a lot changed on that piece, but modes went to states now. So as you're using the Connect client, it started out really small, and then as I selected people replaces contacts. It kind of expanded, and you see all my statuses in the middle, the icons telling you if they're on the phone, if they're in a meeting. But then as I selected the user, it bumped out another window to show you Josh's contact information, the green icon for phone. So as you're using the application, it's going to expand as you use it, and then as you're not using it anymore, you can minimize the windows back down to the smaller window. But what I have noticed is that the Connect client does take up, when you're actively using it, it's going to use up more space. When you're not using it, it's going to use about the same amount of space as the Connect client, maybe a little bit less than the communicator client used to. So but it does expand and shrink as you use the client. The ECC agent toolbar, which I think we had a question earlier about integrating. So the agent toolbar right now is integrated into Communicator. Well, this is now a new standalone web app called the Agent Interaction Center. As you can see here, there's more information that you can display inside the application. You have on the bottom, you have different information you can show about your queues. So do you want to show, how many calls are in a queue? What's the average wait time? But then I can also show information in the middle of the screen. So if we collect information about a user, I can display it back to an agent. So I can show an account number or an account name. If we database dipped and grabbed information, I can display it right here to the agent. I also have some call control, so you don't necessarily have to switch back to the Connect client in order to hang up a call or to conference a call or transfer a call. They have started building some of that functionality into this, with the goal of adding a few more functionality into this client, so your agents wouldn't necessarily have to always have the Connect client and the ECC agent interface up at the same time. They wouldn't have to necessarily have them both running at the same time. They could just use the Agent Interaction Center, and they'll have capability to do more stuff. Like you don't see a mute option on here. I know the mute button is coming. They added the transfer and the conference, which weren't in the initial ones. You have the request. You can raise your hand to request supervisor support. So they are adding more functionality, and that's the goal, is to add a few more call control to this, so that the day-to-day stuff is still built in. Is built into this one interface. Shoreware Director becomes Connect Director. Not a ton of stuff has changed here. They kind of took the diagnostic and monitoring that you saw in 14.2 and used that same layout for the rest of Director. A lot of the stuff is still in the same. You see under users, you still have the same stuff underneath users. The biggest thing is they changed underneath features. They moved a lot of stuff like auto attendance, system directory, hunt groups, route points, work groups, schedules. They moved all of those under a tab called features and kind of put them all together, which definitely made it a little bit cleaner to find a lot of that stuff in one section, as opposed to spreading them all out. From an IT level, there is going to be some change to what it looks like, though, so you'll want to kind of plan on on a little bit of training for your IT team, as that interface did change a little bit. So the big thing is, when you're thinking about are you ready for an upgrade, is look at your server, DHQ and DVS server and software requirements. Make sure you have the right operating systems, processor, memory, and stuff like that. Are you running? If you're going to utilize the VMware, are you running one of the supported versions of VMware? I know I saw a question too from ShoreTel. They are testing VMware 6.5, and they are expecting to certify that 6.5 they said the next 2 releases, which is technically the next 2 quarters. On that, they're very similar to the Server 2016 support. We do anticipate that coming pretty soon.
And Chris, coming on 14.2 as well as Connect, from the details you got, or is that just on Connect?
They have certified like 6.0 for 14.2 and like the new Office and the Windows 10 for 14.2. So I'm assuming they will backwards certify ESXi 6.5 for 14.2 as well. If you're running client workstations, Windows 7 or newer, that's not a problem. And typically Office versions 2010 or newer. But then the biggest thing is working on training plans. You notice there's a lot of changes. You're going to have to train your users, your ECC agents, and your IT team on how that goes. And some ways that Inflow is kind of prepping for this is we have a Connect readiness team inside our company and plan. So we have what to expect documents, Connect readiness checklist documents, and Connect readiness assessments. To start helping customers make sure that they're ready for for planning of this, knowing that typically for these kind of upgrades, we're looking at planning 60 to 90 days in advance so we can work on training plans and stuff like that. So making sure, start working on a checklist of stuff that you need to have ready in order to upgrade to Connect. I'm like, I know I saw a jillion questions, so I'm going to start back.
I've been trying to field them as we go, Chris, but yeah, there's a lot of great ones on all sections, really. So I think one of the first ones I was going to get to is that 6.5 question, which you just answered. Certification with 6.5.
Up towards the top, I have a question about, doesn't updates for 14.2 stop next June? So they have officially stopped development on 14 already. So going forward, the only updates you're going to get for 14.2 is going to be bug fix, releases, and then support for additional like operating systems, something like that. Stuff that doesn't require source code changes, they will continue to to release bug fix patches and stuff like that for 14.2. But yes, they have stopped doing like new features and stuff into 14. That's all being focused on Connect. They're really just trying to keep 14.2 stable and resolve any defects and bugs that they're having inside of 14.2 at this point. But it will be supported for. They're pretty much saying they run 2 versions behind, so for 2 more years, they're still going to officially allow customers and be able to get technical support on 14 for about the next 2 years.
The next one, Chris, I think, was about soft phone and remote desktop within Connect, if that works.
So
speak to that one.
I have not been able to get a soft phone to work over a remote desktop connection. The main reason is the audio mapping. That has to happen both ways, and that we're utilizing some of the capabilities built into the Windows operating system for soft phone, with headset connectivities and stuff like that. We're using some of the Windows side of it. So typically with those cases in Connect, it changes a little bit because of the soft phone client is being updated, but I haven't seen anybody of our customers that are using Connect utilize a soft phone over a remote desktop connection at this time. I'll do some testing on it myself. I have a couple servers I can test on, and I'm writing myself a note, Mike, and you might remind me. We're having another Connect. There's a Connect upgrade update in August that we're going to kind of update everybody on the process of our early adopter upgrades and what we've learned from those initial upgrades and the customer testimonials and stuff like that. And I'll test the remote desktop soft phone on Connect, but I don't have a lot of hope that it will function.
One quick thing I want to interject on this too, Chris, is just the slides will be made available. We've got a ton of questions, maybe more so than we'll be able to get through, which is great. Lots of good engagement. Thank you guys for the thoughtful questions. So if we don't get to your question, don't lose fear, don't lose hope. We will get back to you. We'll circle back to you on it. Lots of good ones. So continuing on that, Chris, there's a question about Linux DVSs and the ability to putty in if there's any sort of documentation on that today.
So ShoreTel has released the login instructions. I do have the login credentials to log into those DVS servers. So ShoreTel's not super excited to publish that to everybody, but it is available. The IP 110s and 115s are fully compatible with Connect. So we have customers they have a lot of customers that still have those handsets deployed, and they are fully supported. Let's see. The only phones, a couple questions about phones. The only phone not supported in Connect that's been released in the last 10 years is the IP 210. The 530s, the 230s, the 560s, the 212s, the 565s, they're all being supported, plus all the 400 series phones. So the only phone is the 210 not being supported in Connect. Brian asked a question about interop with Office 365 to Outlook. We don't have any problems with Office 365. It comes down to what version of Outlook you're running, since ShoreTel integrates with the desktop client version of Outlook. As long as you're running Outlook 2010 through 2016, which I believe the Office 365 version is Office 2016, because we run Office 365, and I have the current Outlook version installed up to date, and I don't have any issues with Connect in my Office 365 Outlook version. Let's see here. Ryan asked, will we have any way for us to test the upgrade? We do have customers that are interested in, or spinning up lab systems, or for their IT department or something like that, that you can test. We also have a program that our engineering team they'll be rolling out for customers that are interested in a full Connect readiness and an upgrade test, where we take a full backup of your system, restore it into a virtual environment, and do an upgrade on it, and then hook up a PRI and hook phones and switches to it, and we run a full Connect test against your database having been upgraded to Connect. So that is an option that we are offering to customers as part of that, but then other customers want to deploy a lab system and test it themselves. So Anna asked about FTP anonymous access. As long as the older SG model switches are out there, that access is in the 200 series phones is still going to have to stay. But yeah, ShoreTel is long-term goal is to remove that access, but it's going to be a while before that FTP anonymous access is removed, because they don't want to rewrite all the code for the older model phones and the older model switches. Nikki asked, are we losing the web version of the client? Currently, the web version of the client is not available. ShoreTel does have it on their engineering path to bring the web version of the client back. As of right now, it's not in the release cycle through the end of this year, though. But there is a web client coming back, yes. The miniature client in Communicator is not coming to the Connect client at all. The slimmed down version you saw of the Connect client, where it's like a bar, is the smallest version of the Connect client that they're going to be releasing, or that you can shrink it down. You can't shrink it down any more than that. Terminal services they ask about, very similar to the Citrix piece, is that they are, the support is out, but they're only in testing certain versions of the Citrix and terminal services. They are planning on expanding that. I expect that to be supported more, all current, versions of terminal services in the next 90 days.
Chris, in the interest of time, we're wrapping up against the hour. We've got lots of excellent questions still out there. That what we'll do is the webinar will be archived. The questions, Chris and I will get back to you with all these questions, lots of great ones, and we will share the slide deck as well, I believe. So all of these resources will be made available to everybody, and I definitely will get back to you on these questions, lots of great ones. So just to wrap up really quick in the last minute here. So other resources that we've got available to get a lot of their information. We've got lots of Connect updates, blogs, white papers, continual webinars around ShoreTel Connect and other just functionality within ShoreTel. You can see it all from the main homepage of our website, like the screenshot shows here. You can access all of that. So feel free to search your way to your heart's content there, as well as everything we're doing, working with clients on Connect and things like that, and creating articles and putting it in our knowledge base too, so you can self-serve on things that you're interested in learning more about, the Edge Gateway and stuff like that. So lots of resources there. And then lastly, leave you with this little bit, which is there's about 40,000 ShoreTel customers worldwide. Not all of them likely will upgrade to Connect, but a bulk of those would likely be upgrading to Connect over the next 24 months. And so a lot of preparation and planning that should go into that. As Chris mentioned, there's just gotchas and things like that. If you want it to go smoothly, which of course you do, different considerations to make as opposed to previous ShoreTel upgrades. One of the things we're doing for customers is a free Connect readiness assessment. So if you're interested in that, please contact us. We'd be happy to work with you on that and really dig into your environment to make sure all the key pieces have been addressed, and if there's any areas you need to remediate or do differently going forward, that we can kind of talk about that and document those with you. So please reach out to the contact information here below via email or phone if you're interested in doing that, and we'll work on coordinating that with you. So that's it. I really appreciate everyone's great questions today and input. We'll be sure to follow up on those questions and continue to educate and provide more information about ShoreTel Connect. So thanks so much.